Welcome to episode 20 of the Views from 314 Feet podcast. My name is Randy Wilkins, and as always, I'm joined by Yankees beat reporter from The Athletic, somewhere in the New York Times building right now, Chris Kirshner. Chris, how are you?
Doing well. It's been a long day. We're recording later than usual. Flight from Toronto was delayed. It was actually delayed both ways. But yeah, fun weekend in Toronto. One of the best cities, I feel like, in North America. Just a really great city, clean, a lot of good food. Culture's great, diverse, basically everything you could want in a city, I feel like Toronto has.
Have they recovered from the Drake ass whooping yet, or are they still like in mourning?
I didn't see any Drake flags waving in the air. I don't actually think they played any Drake songs at Rogers Center in the
really?
4-game series, which was weird. Yeah, I don't recall any playing. I actually don't recall much music at all because, Yankee Stadium has a lot of music.
Yeah,
playing, in between innings. I don't remember any music, which was weird.
that is weird. That's odd for this day and age.
Yeah.
I went to the Spike Lee Do the Right Thing 30.
I saw your tweet.
Yeah, the 35th anniversary for Do the Right Thing on Do the Right Thing Way in Bed-Stuy. And talking about Drake, it just reminded me when it was basically like a hurricane during the party. Like there was a crazy thunderstorm. Well, not thunderstorm. It was just like a regular storm, but it was like raining hard as hell. They played Not Like Us, and there were like people just lost their minds. It was as if it wasn't raining, wasn't doing anything. People were just, that was the only time they enjoyed the rain, was like when they played that one song. It was crazy. So yeah.
I don't know if I feel safe enough to admit this, but I am a Drake stan.
Are you?
Yeah, I've been rocking with Drake since basically the beginning.
Wow.
I still remember vividly going to Target in Gainesville, Florida, where I went to school, and getting what was it? So Far Gone, the mixtape.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to Target for the Blueprint 3, Jay-Z's album.
Yep.
And I heard Best I Ever Had on the radio. That was a really popular song.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I kind of like the sound of this. And basically since then, I've been a huge Drake fan. I've seen him in concert 4 or 5 times.
Mm-hmm.
But I like, the beef is good. I like rap beef. Like
Yeah.
I definitely think Kendrick won. I don't care who wins, who loses.
Yeah.
The songs were good. So it's
Right.
like, if you're a fan of rap music, which I am, we won. Like the songs were good.
Right. Yeah, I'm 100% not a Drake stan. I'm definitely not a Drake fan. I don't go out of my way to like hate on him, but Drake does not make music for me generally. That's how I feel.
That's one of the things I bond with Judge, because Judge is a huge
okay.
Drake fan.
Right. Even during a beef, I know during some of the interviews that Drake was still playing in the background. And I was like, Judge needs to give it a break for a day or two.
Yeah, he controls the music for the most part, but they kind of bounce around with whoever's starting that day. Stroman plays a lot of Drake as well. Nestor is a huge Drake fan. Clark Schmidt's a huge Drake fan. So I'm not alone in the Yankees clubhouse.
Yeah, I'm not. I wouldn't say I'm a Kendrick stan, but like I'm definitely like a fan of his music. I've always been since like the very beginning. So
same.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I mean, I can't mess with Drake like that. It has nothing to do with the beef. It's just like generally like. It was funny because all the things. I mean, outside of like the the obvious like big stuff that Kendrick talked about, just like the accent switching and all the things that he was going through. I was like, yeah, I mean, we've been saying this for years. Like, who is this dude? It was more like that than the music. It's just like the music conveyed to me that I have no idea who this dude is, and that like annoys me. So
I totally get it. I
yeah.
mean, I don't think anyone can deny, though. I don't know if you feel similarly, but he has a ton of bangers, just a ton.
Yeah, but yeah, I agree. But like, that's what I'm saying. Like, those songs don't do anything for me, but I acknowledge how big they are. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not who he's targeting.
Yeah, I
You
get
know
it.
what I mean? Like, but I respect that he's like a hit machine. Like, I'm not blind. You know what I mean? So, or deaf, thankfully. So, don't want anybody to feel like I'm not being ableist or something. But, yeah, I mean, I get it. I know what he's doing. It's just it's not for me generally.
Totally get it.
So, speaking of Aaron Judge, he had another home run yesterday. I don't think we should talk that much about Judge because there isn't that much to say. He's the best player in baseball. He's amazing. Like, he's having currently arguably the greatest right-handed hitter season ever in the history of Major League Baseball. Every platitude you could give this dude. But I think what he did yesterday was pretty important, hitting that home run. It was also important that like Soto showed up right before first pitch to play in that game. But I thought it was another important moment to show Judge's impact by just hitting that home run and just giving them the early lead and saying to Garrett Cole, okay, like here's your cushion, go do your thing. And the Yankees ended up like with a pretty comfortable win. But I think Judge made a statement just by hitting that home run in the first inning to just say, okay, like we're going to win today and I'm going to take care of it.
And coming into Sunday's game, it had been 10 straight games where the Yankees had given up the lead first, which was part of the reason why they were struggling during this. I mean, I don't know if they're out of it necessarily yet, but they're still struggling. But, part of the reason why they've been struggling is they've had to play from behind. And playing from behind in baseball is tough. Hitting is hard. Apparently, it's easy. It looks like for Judge.
Right.
He is just unbelievable to watch. I saw the stat yesterday. Yankees who've had at least 80 RBIs before July 1st, and it's Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig and Aaron Judge, which is absurd. It's crazy. I think what makes this crazy is just the fact that nowadays, like the league average OPS is barely over 700 or something like that now.
Right. And
he is just blowing past like every other hitter in baseball. He had a 277 WRC plus in June. Like what? Like how is that even possible?
Right.
He hit 409. Like he's 6'7". He's not a singles hitter. He's not like a Luis Ariz type of hitter.
And he has a better batting average than Ariz now.
Yeah. On base percentage in June, 514, slugging 864. Yeah, I mean it's wild. What's hard to, as a reporter, it's hard to like come up with different topics or questions to really ask, just because it's like, what do you really ask right now?
Right.
Everybody knows he's good. Judge is a very difficult interview because he's not going to really say anything if you ask him a question about himself. So it's hard to like come up with like different story ideas like centered on Judge's greatness. Like, I'm kind of at a loss. So if you're listening to this and you have ideas, definitely feel free to reach out, because it's difficult. Obviously he's great, but there's only so many ways to say a player is great before it's like, okay, we get it.
Yeah, I mean, and you're not even taking it for granted. It's just like kind of indescribable.
No, yeah, it's
Because
indescribable.
yeah, I mean, it's just I think it's also just hard to wrap your head around him being on par with Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig. Like that, it's very hard to understand the full context and meaning of that statement alone. Like hearing it on a list, it's crazy, but like, what does that actually mean? It's kind of hard to have a reference because they're just like mythical names, mythical people to all of us at this point. Like none of us saw them play and all that stuff, obviously. So yeah, I mean, there's not much to talk about with Judge, and I mean that with the utmost respect. Like he's just the best player in baseball. He's doing like truly historical things, and then you just hope that he keeps it up. I mean, that's really the only thing that I can contribute to it is I just hope it keeps going, just from like a selfish Yankees fan perspective, but also just from like a baseball fan perspective. Like, how far can he take this? Especially because you think of Bonds, and obviously there's a lot of stuff that like comes along with that. That's not the case with Judge, presumably, and it's just like an incredibly talented person in his prime. Like I said before, like getting closer and closer to mastering his craft. I mean, it's basically what we're watching. But beyond Judge, like you had brought this up when describing Judge and wondering if the Yankees are starting to get out of this malaise, this funk, this like bad stretch that comes with every season. And I'm with you. I'm not sure that they're out of it yet. You obviously need to see more. But I think there are signs that reveal themselves in Toronto that could suggest that better days will be coming. I think Glaber is one of them. Ben Rice is certainly one of them. Cole is another one. I think there's still some places where there's like concern, but I think Glaber, Ben Rice, Garrett Cole are at least three places or people that you can point to and say, okay, if this keeps going, then they should be okay.
100%. I definitely thought it was encouraging after Glaber got benched for 2 days. He hit well in those following games after getting benched. So it looks like he responded well to getting benched. DJ hit the ball well, which was encouraging to see because of how terrible, frankly, he was to start the season. Like he mentioned, Garrett looked like Garrett for the most part. Command wasn't like 100% sharp, but he had his swing and miss stuff, which he didn't have against the Mets last week. So that was encouraging to see. But honestly, like it feels like as long as Judge and Soto are in the lineup, like they have a good chance of winning on a day-to-day basis. Like those two guys have been so incredible. And Soto hits the 3-run homer 2 innings after he injures his hand, and it's like his hand was swollen,
right?
And he hits a 3-run homer 2 innings later, which is it's crazy. As long as those guys stay healthy, like the Yankees should be fine for the most part. I'm not going to say like if those two guys go into the playoffs as two of the best players, that means that they're winning the World Series. Like obviously, like they need more guys around them to step up, both on offensive side and the pitching side, which was absolutely brutal in June, which we'll get to a little later. And honestly, like the offense is, I don't know if concerning is the word, but there are definitely issues there. Because it's, as I've said before on here, in the playoffs, if I'm an opposing manager, I'm like, putting up the 4 sign to Judge, and I'll face Verdugo. I will get beat by Verdugo. I will get beat by Glaber. I will get beat by by whoever. I just don't want to get beat by Judge. Like they're that's why I think it's really important that someone steps up in the lineup, because they do run the risk of teams in October just refusing to pitch to Judge.
Yeah, so I agree. I think that this stretch also highlights the importance of Giancarlo Stanton when he's doing well. I think that his impact has both been felt when he's been in the lineup this year and certainly when he's not in the lineup. And I think it's pretty significant. He was going to hit 20, 25 home runs before the All-Star break, the way that he was going, which, in the context of this conversation and projecting down the road about protecting Judge in the playoffs, I mean, he's a crucial piece of that. I do think if you can get Glaber going, that does help a lot, especially in Stanton's absence. I think at the very least, the Yankees need one more like power threat. Like it can be Soto, Judge, and with Stanton out, you need one more guy to kind of like fill that slot that at least gives the threat of being able to drive the ball. I don't think they have enough of those guys, which is part of the problem at the moment. So I think if Glaber and his performance this weekend is an indication, then I feel more comfortable with the offense. I also love what Ben Rice is doing. I think he's had the quality of at bat is major league caliber for a very young guy who's making his first tour through the majors. I mean, he controls the strike zone really well. It seems like he has a plan. He can obviously hit the ball really hard. And I feel very strongly that Boone needs to throw that platoon approach out of the window with Rice. Just play him. Like, he's one of your better hitters right now. I wouldn't get cute. Like, I know you have JD Davis, but like, so what? I mean, JD Davis isn't good enough to negate what Ben Rice is doing. Might as well just keep playing him and see if the exposure to both righties and lefties helps him out. I mean, you need as much help as you could get at the moment. So for me, I wouldn't be being cute about like handedness. He looks good. Just keep playing him.
I totally agree. I mean, I think it's a mistake if JD Davis is in and Ben Rice is on the bench. I like, we're past that point already. Like, he is a very quality hitter. I'm looking now. I mean, he's walked 15% of the time. Striking out, he's walking more than striking out, which is always very encouraging for a player who's just making his major league debut. 45% sweet spot percentage, which, I mean, he's squaring up everything. Even in the, I think it was Friday's game, he went 2 for 4. I think all 4 of his batted balls were over 100 miles an hour exit velocity. More times than not, if you're hitting the ball that hard, you're going to have good results. Yeah, like, there's no reason to be playing JD Davis over Ben Rice. It doesn't matter if Chris Sale's on the mound. It doesn't matter if prime Randy Johnson is on the mound. Like, I would want Ben Rice in my lineup every single day. And also, they have, as we're recording this, 29 days left until the trade deadline. You have to see if this guy can hit both sides of righties and lefties.
Right.
There's no reason to bench him against lefties. Like, you have to see if he can do it.
Right.
And if he can't do it, then that also provides more data for the Yankees to make decisions if they need a first baseman or not. Like, you have to, use this time with Ben on the major league level as an evaluation tool. And it seems like they are doing that. I was talking to someone in the front office this past weekend, and it seems like, one of the main reasons why they called him up instead of someone else is because they wanted to use the time before the trade deadline to evaluate, can this guy play, or can this guy or is he still, a year, 2 years away? And so far, like, he's showing that he can play. Obviously, it's still early, but so far it's been encouraging.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that encourages me, despite it being early, is how he controls his at bats and the strike zone. Like, he doesn't look skittish. He doesn't look like he doesn't understand what the strike zone is. But he just seems like very much in control of his at bat and his commitment to his plan. You know what I mean? Like, you can tell sometimes that he's looking for a pitch the way that he takes other pitches. And I don't know. I find like that's the most impressive part so far for a young hitter. And it feels like everything that he did on the minor league level, he's doing the exact same thing on the major league level so far. So like every part of his game is translating offensively. And he's been decent at first base. I mean, I know he wasn't there a lot, but he actually looked better at first base than he did the 1 or 2 innings that he was catching. Like, it looks like he was like he had never like caught before when he had that 1 inning or 2 innings in Toronto, which I thought was funny. Obviously, it's super small sample size, doesn't really matter, but I feel like he's been competent defensively at first, and offensively he looks comfortable and looks like a major league hitter. You know what I mean? So you don't need to be cute here. Like, you need as much help offensively after Judge as humanly possible, and like he's offering it to you. You got to take it. Like, I don't think this really requires a lot of thought, in my opinion. But there was something I did want to ask you about this, because when it happened, I was debating if we should bring this up, but since we're talking about the Toronto series, the Marcus Stroman Glaber thing. So I'm in the camp that it was an overreaction to begin with, because I don't know what Volpe and Glaber were supposed to do better on that specific play. I had no idea why he was yelling at Glaber. I mean, it was like, you could tell on television it was a quick turn, and Vlad was like busting his ass down the line. Like, he just didn't beat it out. Okay, he's in the moment, that's fine. I don't, that part is fine. It happens. I don't really care about that part. But like, the whole idea that like Stroman fired up the team and like changed the fortunes of Glaber and his offense is absurd to me. Like, one has nothing to do with the other. The guy that changed the game was Soto with the 3-run home run, and Soto's in right field. He doesn't even know what's going on in the dugout with Stroman. Like, Stroman's yelling at like 6 guys and a bunch of coaches. So like, I'm not really sure how. I know that like people want to look for narratives. I'm not talking about the media. I'm just talking about like fans. They want to like look for something. And like, the issue when a team is always losing has to be that they have no fire and they don't compete all the time, and they're just like losers all of a sudden. But like, it just kind of bothered me that people kept making this connection. And I was like, it has nothing to do with any of that. It's because they have Juan Soto, and last year in 2022, they didn't have Juan Soto. Like, Juan Soto had the biggest play in the entire game. Like, yes, they could play with more fire when they're losing and they look like shit, basically, but that's like low hanging fruit. Like, that's not what the issue is. They were just playing bad.
Yeah, I mean, Marcus probably shouldn't have done that. He was showing up Glaber in the moment and publicly. Like, obviously, Yes is going to show that on camera. Everybody and their mother is going to break that down and come on one side or the other. So, he shouldn't have done that. If he wanted to do that, then probably do it privately. I appreciated that he was honest with his answers when we were asking about it post game, which he didn't have to be honest, honestly. Like, he could have said, I was upset about something else, but he took, accountability for it, which I think should be commended. So for that, like, he definitely deserves props. But as far as like firing up the team and all that, there's no way of quantifying that anyway.
Right.
If you can hear that, the cleaning crew is behind me, so I apologize in advance. But yeah, for like, there's no there's no reason to think that like the season is turning, or even if they lost that game, like the season is crumbling because there's now turmoil in the clubhouse. Like
Right.
it doesn't work that way. Like obviously, like it would be, as a reporter, it's like sure, like I love that stuff because it is something to discuss and talk about, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the Yankees won that game because Stroman was yelling. It's even like with the
Right.
Cubs. The Cubs this past weekend, Justin Steele. I don't know if you saw that. Like
Yeah, I
when
saw it.
yeah, he's like, wake the fuck up, wake the fuck up. Like, are the Cubs going to win the World Series now because they did that? But again, like I totally understand the fans who were upset that he showed up Glaber. Shouldn't have been so public. Like again, if he was upset, probably do it behind the scenes. That's really the only takeaway I had from it. And I appreciated his honesty when he was answering questions.
Yeah, I thought his honesty leads more to the fact that they are a tight clubhouse. And
Yeah,
that,
for sure.
it's like you're comfortable enough to be honest with the media and with the team. And I thought all of that was fine. I just thought it was and just a genuinely odd reaction to a play that like didn't have an issue. You know what I mean? It's not like Glaber took 20 minutes.
Yeah, I don't get it because I looked at the Statcast data and like even the exchange, the Statcast can measure everything, and
Right.
the exchange was like in Glaber's 93rd percentile,
Yeah.
and Vlad Guerrero, that was his fastest sprint speed of the season, and he's like getting down the line basically as fast as Corbin Carroll gets down the line.
Yeah, he was flying. It was just
I've never seen him move that fast. So
neither have I. And it was just like, why are you yelling at anybody? Like, it's just he just beat it out. Like, it's okay. Like, and it was like it had that big hop to Volpe. It was that's what I just found like bizarre about it. It was like he just beat it out. Why are you? I know you think you made a good pitch, and I think he did. I mean,
yeah,
he
he
did great
did.
contact, so it was a good pitch. But like, what else were they supposed to do there? I just thought that was the weird part about it. It was just the reaction to
Yeah,
begin with.
I agree, and he didn't really pitch that well in the
Yeah, he
game.
was bad. And then he
So
walked the next guy.
yeah, so it's like if you're going to be upset with someone, like you might want to look in the mirror because his command was not sharp. He didn't have great stuff. So like Glaber not turning the double play in his mind like wasn't the reason why he wasn't pitching well in the first place.
Right. Right. All right. So that was a Toronto series, and the Yankees end up salvaging that series by splitting it. And obviously they have an off day today. We're recording on Monday. There's some other things that we need to discuss with the team, including Anthony Volpe and also where the pitching is at, and specifically the relief pitching. And as we all know, it's not a good spot. So we'll get into all of that right after this break. And we're back. It's Randy, it's Chris. It's the Views from 314 Feet podcast. We're already on our 20th episode. Like, time is going by pretty fast. So thank you everybody for listening and riding along with us. So we mentioned Anthony Volpe, and I know you've had some conversations with people on Twitter about it. It's becoming like a topic of conversation, and he's obviously struggling. I said that was my bold prediction. He'd be a top 5 shortstop. I think he's been that defensively. Right now, offensively, he's not. Like, let's be honest. There's a lot going on. He's not walking much. He's having a lot of trouble with breaking balls, which I think is becoming a theme with him, not just this year, but last year as well. And also he's not making up for the lack of on base with power. And we both know he has power, but he changed his approach and his swing, and he sacrificed a lot of power for contact, but the contact's coming in and out along with like the lack of on base just from like walking or whatever. So he's been an issue, admittedly. And I wrote a tweet about moving Volpe out of the leadoff spot. I personally don't agree with that idea, but I know that you would prefer that if you had a chance to do that. So, what are your thoughts on Volpe, the leadoff spot, and what you think the Yankees should do moving forward?
I mean, they're not maximizing the production in front of Soto and Judge how you would prefer. You know, you would want someone who's getting on base in front of those guys, and Volpe is just not doing that. You know, in the month of June, he had a 238 on base. That's awful. That's terrible, and like you just you don't want someone who is not getting on base in front of Juan Soto and Aaron Judge. Like that's just basic common sense from a baseball standpoint. The thing that I'm interested about and something I need to ask about is he's somehow chasing more pitches out of the zone than he was last year, even though pitchers, like one of the reasons why he's not walking is because pitchers are attacking him in the zone because you don't want him to get on base in front of Judge and Soto.
Right.
But he's somehow chasing more pitches out of the zone, even though like they're attacking him. So it's very strange that he's also, you know, chasing more than he was in his rookie season. And, you know, his rookie season was obviously very up and down offensively. It's something that, you know, I tweeted during the game on Sunday, like, you know, I don't know if we're there just yet of like needing to move Volpe out of the leadoff spot, but you know, if he continues to not hit and not get on base, like you have to do something. I mean, a 238 on base is really bad. For the month of June, let's see, as I pull up the stats, there were 13 Yankees who had a better on base percentage than Volpe in June. Obviously, to varying plate appearances. Like Jahmai Jones had 26 plate appearances, got on base, you know, 32% of the time. Grisham, 46 plate appearances, 348. Ben Rice, 40, you know, so on and so forth. But, you know, the one problem that they have right now is like, okay, if you're taking Volpe out of the leadoff spot, then who? You know, I tweeted also on Sunday that, you know, if I'm the one making the lineup, you know, Juan Soto would be my choice to lead off. He gets on base at a historic clip. You want your best hitters getting the most plate appearances possible. I don't want Anthony Volpe. I'm sorry, but I don't want Anthony Volpe getting the most plate appearances on my team, especially if he can't get on base. He doesn't hit for power. Him leading off and being in front of Judge and Soto, you're not utilizing one of his best skills, which is stealing bases, because you don't want to run the risk of him getting thrown out on the bases in front of Judge and Soto. They won't put Juan Soto in the leadoff spot. One, I don't think he wants to do that. And two, I just don't see the Yankees operating that forward thinking, honestly. Like I know a lot of people think like they're beholden to the analytics. There's some things that like they just don't follow analytical thinking on. And this is one of them because it's like very clear that Judge and Soto should be higher in the order. Like even with Judge hitting third, obviously it's been working fine. He's driving in a lot of runs, yada, yada. But still, I want to make sure that those guys have as many plate appearances as possible. I know that like it's still a minuscule amount of plate appearances that we're talking about, but even think of it this way: would you rather have Aaron Judge have 20 more plate appearances, or would you rather have Anthony Volpe have 20 more plate appearances? I would rather have Aaron Judge have 20 more plate appearances over Anthony Volpe. I mean, it's just like as simple as that. The problem is they don't really have a guy that they can turn to right now to be in the leadoff spot Alex Verdugo led off for the Red Sox last year. He's had a lot of experience in that spot. He's been horrible now for basically 2 full months. Like he's not a great hitter. He's not getting on base a lot. DJ LeMahieu obviously has had a lot of experience leading off. Like we just talked about, he's just had a couple of good games. Probably need to see more out of him. Gleyber Torres has led off some. You know, I don't know if people know this, but Gleyber has actually been pretty solid, other than, obviously he just got benched. But if we go back to, the start of May, he's slightly above average hitter. From May 1st, he's at 104 WRC plus. It's not like he's been just a horrible player by any means. Volpe since May 1st is at 92 WRC plus. But again, like there's just not many options to choose from right now of replacing Volpe. So I feel like they're still going to continue with Volpe in the leadoff spot. And also it's just, talking with people with the Yankees, like to a degree, like they kind of treat him with kid gloves, especially offensively. Like it's just, they think like he's still having a really good year offensively. And it's like, I don't see it. I mean,
well, what do you mean when you say that they treat him with kid gloves? Like just in how the perception of what he's doing?
The perception. It's like, Gleyber was just benched 2 days ago for performance-related reasons, and he's been a better player than Anthony Volpe offensively. Yeah. And if they still think like, the other day Boone said like he's a way better hitter Volpe is than last year. It's like, are we sure? Like I said this in last week's episode at the end of the episode. It's like, I don't know if Volpe is a better hitter than he was last year. I don't know. He's more contact oriented, sure, but do I want a player who just slaps the ball around and has to find grass to really have success on my team? Probably not. Right now, he looks like a glove first player, and that's fine. Like, there's obviously still a lot of value to be had when you are one of the better shortstops defensively, and he's a good base runner. He knows what he's doing on the base paths, so he has value there. But hitting wise, he's probably over 700 plate appearances now on the big league level, and in those 700 plate appearances, I don't think he's a good hitter. And from what we've seen this year, again, like I said last week, he does have to find the happy medium of selling out for contact and selling out for power. He's been on the opposite sides of the spectrum now in both years. So if he can get some of that power back while still hitting for contact, like, there's a chance that he could be good, but, something has to change now, because what he's been showing in year 2 is just not really a player who you want high in the order.
Yeah. Okay. So I have a couple of thoughts on this. I really think at some point Volpe needs to focus more on like driving the ball. Like that was the thing, in my opinion, that made him stand out offensively last year. He had all those struggles, and, the OPS wasn't great because of the on base percentage and stuff, but he was still like flashing power from the shortstop position, which if you're able to do that, I think you should lean into that more. I'm generally against the like contact first approach. Like I'm not a fan of Luis Ariz. I know he's like a good hitter, but like I don't think he has that much value, in my opinion. There's only so much you could do with a bunch of singles, and I think for like moments it's helpful, but like in the aggregate of a season, I don't think that has much value. It doesn't have as much impact as somebody that can like consistently drive the ball. So like that's kind of where I'm at with Volpe.
If you're going to be a singles hitter, in my opinion, sorry to interrupt you. If you're going to be a singles hitter, like you need to be hitting over 300 and getting on base and like doing all those things to have value. If you're Volpe, who's basically a singles hitter this year, and you're hitting, what is he hitting? 260 and has a 315 on base, like that has no value
Yeah.
offensively. Zero.
Right. Right. And that's where my disappointment lies right now, is that we've gone too far to the other end of the spectrum. Like, you have to drive the ball. I don't care if like Soto and Judge are behind you or in front of you or whatever. You have to drive the ball, which like leads me to like my other point about this. You can move Volpe, but the issue still remains. So whether he's batting first or fourth or eighth or ninth, you're doing a double leadoff thing, whatever, he still has to like contribute and produce. So the problem isn't really addressed. Like, you've removed him to like help out Soto and Judge theoretically, but Volpe's still going to be in the lineup. Like, he still has to hit. He still has to like figure this out. You know what I mean? Like, the Yankees still do a good job of creating traffic on the bases. They're just like not driving them in as much as they did earlier in the season. I mean, we could go back to the Mets series where it felt like they had bases loaded every other inning, and the only thing that they got was a Aaron Judge grand slam because he's Aaron Judge. You know, so it just feels like in a lot of these games, they've had a lot of traffic, but can't knock them in at the clip that they did before. And Volpe would just be in that situation again. And you have an expectation now of him having to drive in the runs instead of being the guy to set the table for the two main like run producers. So you can move him anywhere in the lineup. That's not really addressing the problem with Volpe specifically, which is either increasing his on base percentage so it complements this like contact approach, or him figuring out that happy medium of hitting the crap out of the ball and not sacrificing all the contact. Like, Volpe still needs to be fixed in some form or fashion, regardless of where he's at. And the other thing, my like only pushback on moving Soto and Judge up is that, to me, the bigger issue with the lineup right now is the middle and bottom of the lineup, not like the top. So like, if you move Soto and Judge up, that's 7 straight guys that, if you want to take Rice out of that, okay, maybe he breaks it up or whatever, but like the way they've been hitting, that's like 6 or 7 guys doing nothing. Like, you have to hope then that this Glaber thing is real. Rice, again, you could put in like the good hitter category right now. I'm not buying LeMahieu yet. Like, the catchers are like hot and cold. I don't even know who else is on his team right now, but like JD Davis, you know what I mean? Like, you just Verdugo, you have like 6 or 7 guys that are
Your
like,
boy Grisham, you forgot Grisham.
yeah, but my boy Grisham's hitting though.
He is hitting.
He's driving the ball. He's doing his thing. So, I mean, if Grisham was playing, but even then, you know, obviously we don't know if that's going to be real or consistent or whatever. You're just running the risk, in my mind, of like exacerbating the like bigger problem with the lineup right now, because now you get them a couple extra plate appearances, but you're also like creating this like big hole and making it bigger, in my opinion. So I know like there's not a huge difference between 2-3 and 1-2, but it just feels like at least you're kind of like delaying the inevitable of hitting that like rough patch in the lineup the way that they're generally performing right now. So I don't know. I get the logic of it. It totally makes sense, but I also feel like they don't have the personnel right now to do it. Like I said on Twitter, if Stanton was in the lineup, then I would absolutely agree and say they should do that right away. But they just don't have that guy right now, unless Glaber turns into that. So it's kind of like you're helping one end, but you're like hurting the other end. And I'm not sure which one is more important. It just feels like Soto and Judge are so good that you could just leave it there and they'll make it work. I mean, they're obviously winning because of them right now for the most part. So maybe you just don't mess with it, because the rest of it is a big question mark right now.
Since May 1st, these are the Yankees on base leaders. Judge, who has a 496 on base since May 1st, which is crazy. Soto, 436. Ben Rice, 375. Jahmai Jones, 367, John Birdie, 359, Giancarlo Stanton, 306, Glaber, 303, Volpe, 292, Grisham, 288, LeMahieu, 286. So, like, again, like, there's just not many options right now.
There's like nothing there.
Yeah, they're just not. Rice, Jones, Birdie have barely played, and Birdie's hurt. The one
and he
thing
wouldn't
that
be the leadoff guy anyway.
no, he wouldn't be the leadoff guy anyway. I mean, the one thing that they could use is someone who gets on base at the trade deadline. We talked about him in the last episode, but Luis Rengifo is someone who gets on base and hits for average. Again, he's not the best defender, get that, but I think having someone who can hit and get on base, I think is valuable to have in front of Judge and Soto. I'm not saying he should be the everyday third baseman, but just having someone like him, the architect of him, would make this team even more dangerous because you put pressure on pitchers immediately, and a lot of the times you end up winning those games because it's hard to score, and if you have to face someone who gets on base a lot leading off, and then you have to face Soto and Judge back to back, and then Giancarlo Stanton, like, we're talking about a possible dangerous lineup. Right now it's not dangerous just because no one's getting on base other than Soto and Judge.
Right. They did score 24 runs in 2 games in their win. So that part is encouraging if we're going to think about them potentially getting out of this slide. And I know they're playing Cincinnati and Boston this week, so maybe that'll help a little bit. But we'll see.
I mean, they're not facing the Blue Jays in October, and the Blue Jays pitching is pretty garbage.
Right.
Kevin Gossman's fallen off completely this year. Their bullpen is garbage.
Is bad. Yeah.
So it's like, all right, like, cool, like they scored runs, but like, you would like to see them do this against actual good teams.
Yeah.
So we'll see. The Red Sox are coming to town this weekend, and the Red Sox are pitch well, so we'll see what happens this weekend.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think Boston's a very good team. Even I know they're playing better. It's just something about the makeup of their roster that I'm just like, I don't think this is going to last. Like, I know
but they pitch.
Yeah, they pitch. Yeah.
I'm not saying they're winning the World Series.
They didn't pitch against San Diego though.
No, they didn't.
They got hammered against San Diego. So speaking of pitching, the Yankees also have some terrible pitching in one department. That would be the bullpen, which I will do the patting on the back for the both of us this time. We've said this from the beginning, pretty much, that this bullpen is not good, and people would point to the bullpen ERA, and it was like they can't strike anybody out, and now they can't strike anybody out, and they walk people, and they give up loud contact. And the Yankees know that they don't have a good bullpen because it feels like they have 3 new relievers every other day now. So all their transactions outside of JD Davis involve the bullpen. So I know that you recently spoke with Matt Blake, and I know you talked about like a multitude of things, but what were some of the things that stood out to you in your conversation with Matt Blake?
Well, number one, outside of the bullpen, is Carlos Rodon, who has turned into a huge concern over the past 3 starts. It's clear that he doesn't have the same juice on his fastball that he did when he was with the Giants and with the White Sox. It's just not there for whatever reason. And that was something that Blake even pointed out himself. It's like the league has clearly adjusted to Carlos's fastball. He has to basically either lower the usage or change the sequencing. Like the sequencing in his start against Toronto was abysmal. I think 12 of his first 18 pitches were fastball, and it was very clear from the moment Bo Bichette stepped into the box to begin the game, that their plan was to attack Carlos's fastball. I think he threw like 4 inside fastballs in a row to George Springer, and he had 2 home runs against him. So that has to change. They know that. It will be interesting to see how Carlos adjusts on Wednesday when he pitches against the Reds. Like, if they lower the fastball usage, if he changes it up at all, something has to change. He can't continue pitching this way.
Right.
And then for the bullpen, Blake was very clear that the best outcome for any pitcher is for a hitter to not make contact.
Right.
Which we've been screaming about since the beginning of April when we started this podcast. It was very clear in like the first 2 weeks. It's like, oh, they have a bullpen that is just pitching to contact. You're going to run the risk of it not working some nights. And in the month of June, it didn't work a lot of nights.
Right.
So they are actively scanning the trade market for bullpen pieces, which I wrote about on Monday. I don't know the names just yet. It's still kind of early, honestly. Most of these teams are still trying to figure out if they're buying or selling. The National League, basically everybody except the Marlins and Rockies is still they're still in the playoff race. I think the Cubs are the 3rd worst team in the NL right now, and they're still 5 games back of the wild card. So there's still a lot of time to figure out who's buying, who's selling. So the Yankees are certainly looking, not to say like they're going to land any reliever specifically, just because of the fact that there may not be many teams who are selling. And if they do sell, the costs are going to be very, very high. Like someone like Tanner Scott, like the Marlins could cash in on him because every team who's buying wants Tanner Scott.
Right.
So that's something to also keep in mind if you're a Yankees fan, that it may be difficult to make trades. But they know like they have to get better in the bullpen. Like Blake was like straight up. I'll read the quote. He says, "I think we're just trying to cycle through guys and see what sticks. And obviously right now it's been a little bit of a higher volume of turnover than we're used to." So they're basically just bringing in, Michael Tonkin, and Tonkin works out. They brought in Phil Bickford, who had a little success with the Dodgers and Mets previously. It didn't work out.
My man cut all that hair just to get cut like a week later.
Yeah, that's
like
tough.
Darnell McDonald, if anybody remembers that, with his locks.
Yes.
And he cut his locks off, and then he was gone like 3 days later.
Tim Hill, they bring him in from the White Sox. Josh Maciejewski, who they called up from AAA. It's like they just hope that one of these guys can pitch well and sustain it, and that's one spot fewer that they have to address. It's tough right now because they have basically like 3 or 4 guys in the bullpen who are just easily replaceable and DFA-able. I'm going to make that up.
Yeah. It's accurate though.
Yeah, but it's like that's just the nature of the bullpen right now. They have 3 or 4 guys who, at a moment's notice, they could get cut for someone else. So it's something that they need to improve upon. Like they can't go into October with a similar bullpen that they have now. One guy who Blake mentioned when I spoke with him is Jack Neely. He's in AAA right now. He is taller than Aaron Judge, 6'8" reliever. He has let me see how many strikeouts he has. 56 strikeouts across 35 innings. He's someone who can get a lot of swing and miss, and the Yankees like that. They brought him up to AAA for a reason. They want him to face better competition. It's not a matter of stuff. Like they could have called him up from AA if they wanted to, if it was just about stuff. Like they want to see it now on the AAA level. And if he continues to pitch well on this level, Blake basically said, like, I'm sure he'll be in the conversation for the second half at some point. That's what he said. I have no reason to not believe him. He is very honest when he speaks with the media. I'm sure they've had conversations about him before. But yeah, he's someone to keep an eye on for the second half of the season.
So before we wrap up this conversation, I just have a question. Like, how did this bullpen get to this point? I mean, this really isn't the Yankees' MO in terms of building a bullpen since like 2015. We could go as far back as that time, I believe, like or 2016 when they were trying to emulate the Royals approach in building a bullpen, and they've had a very specific profile, and for whatever reason they've totally gone away from that. So is this, like, in your opinion, a get anybody because our analytics team can identify these like diamonds in the rough like Clay Holmes, and then give them the Matt Blake, and Blake will turn him into that diamond? And they've kind of gotten away from like spending big money on relievers because it's generally volatile, I guess. But like, is that the reason, or are there other things that go into why this bullpen has kind of fallen off a cliff by Yankee standards?
Well, one of the things that they've been really good at over the past few years is identifying basically bargain bin relievers and turning them into special pitchers, or trading for them, for that matter. Clay Holmes was someone who didn't have any success in Pittsburgh, traded for him, turned him into a really good reliever. Luke Weaver, someone who I did a story on Weaver several weeks ago now. Weaver thought his career was near the end of the line, gets with the Yankees, rejuvenates himself, and now is someone who is trusted out of the bullpen. I think the one thing that I think is very clear with how they've built the bullpen is they've certainly kind of strayed to the side of our analytics people and our pro scouting people believe we can turn these guys into special pitchers just based off the characteristics of them. Dennis Santana is one of them. They were super high on Dennis Santana in spring training. They thought they like had a gem on their hands. Obviously it didn't work out. Victor Gonzalez, they thought, he was going to be basically Wandy 2.0, didn't work out. So I think this year's bullpen shows that you can't always just build a bullpen off of guys who you like their characteristics. Like, sometimes you just do have to spend money to get the better crop of relievers in, and they just didn't do that this offseason. The only pitcher who they really gave money to was Weaver, and he came into spring training in the starter mix.
Right.
He was, if everybody stayed healthy, he might have been, the sixth starter coming into spring training. And obviously, just because of need and how well Luis Gil pitched, he ended up not being in the rotation. But he was the only guy that they truly gave money to this offseason. They traded for Ferguson and Gonzalez with the Dodgers. Obviously, that didn't work out. But, I do think that moving forward, it does have to be a mix of, we like the characteristics of this pitcher, but we also should be spending a little money to build a bullpen.
Right. All right. After this break, we'll get to the mailbag. We'll be back on the other side. It's mailbag time. We have about 5 questions. So for the sake of not having this podcast go 2 hours, we'll try to be as succinct as possible to answer all 5 questions. So just jump right into it. Adam Shea, role of the manager. I want to start this email off with saying the Yankees are good, and I'm not calling for anyone's job. What is the role of the MLB manager? He can't tell the team to hit more threes like the NBA or come up with some new and exciting offense or defense like the NFL. What do they do besides bullpen usage that impacts the team on a daily basis? I also ask this because to me, it seems ever since 2020, when this team hits a skid, they hit it hard, and it takes a while for them to come out of it. We hear don't worry or things will come around, but it feels like nothing gets done, and the lackluster plays continues on for way too long. I know this is more of a fan's perspective than anything by the numbers. Just curious about your thoughts.
Well, the role of the manager is also speaking with the media every single day. We talk to Aaron Boone twice a day. So think of like the manager as the White House press secretary. They're there to answer questions. They are the face that you see. They are the CEO, basically. They have to manage 26 personalities. They have to make sure everything is cohesive inside the clubhouse. They build the lineups. I know a lot of fans think that the Yankees front office is building lineups. That's not true. He does get input, but Boone has 100% say of who is hitting in the lineup. Like you said, like sometimes it is difficult to judge a manager on performance because he's not the one on the mound. He's not the one in the batter's box. Aaron Judge is not Aaron Judge because Aaron Boone is his manager. Like it just doesn't work that way. So think of him as the guy who is trying to hold the clubhouse together, managing 26 athletes. Some of them have varying egos, and he has to make it all fit together like a puzzle. So that's the job of a manager. That's the main job of a manager, is keeping the clubhouse together, because sometimes it can get sideways, depending on who's performing well, which personalities are in there. That's one thing that Boone has done a really good job with since becoming the Yankees manager, is holding the clubhouse together.
Okay, so I will just say, to add on, because this is one of my major criticisms of Boone. It's not as prevalent this year, but one of the reasons why I felt like he should have been removed over the last couple years is exactly what Adam brings up about the team's reaction to adversity and how long it takes, and kind of piggybacking off of what you said about holding the clubhouse together. I think, especially talking to different people like former players and guys that played with Boone and were around the team, they all like praise his management skills, like he's like great to connect with, like on a human level. Like I heard nothing but praise when it came to Aaron Boone in that regard. Just watching the team, especially since like 2020 and really 2021, and I feel like last year as well, it just felt like something where when the team hit the skids, it really did take them a long time to get out of it, and it just had like a different vibe. You know what I mean? Like, not necessarily that guys were getting at each other or like they were disrespecting him or anybody else, but it just felt like their ability to respond to tough times felt very lagged. And the guy who just walked by you totally busted his ass, which was hilarious. So it just feels like there have been multiple seasons where when they hit the skids, that runway is way too long for talented teams to experience. And it was always like his answers to the public weren't good enough. Speaking about the relationship with the media, a lot of them were not satisfying. But beyond that, because you're just like talking to the fans and the media, that's one thing. But you could just tell from the energy of the team and how they responded to like bad moments in games, like how it would snowball, and it felt like nobody was capable of stopping it. So to me, that's partly the manager's responsibility, and I felt like he failed multiple times. And I'll always go back to last year with when it was clear that the season was falling apart, and like Boone and Harrison Bader and a couple other people had the audacity to tell us everything's cool, like we're the Yankees, like all that nonsense, which was just like insulting to everyone involved, like the journalists in the room covering that, and then the people consuming it. It was like this season is collapsing, and you're just like, it's all right, we'll be fine. And then like Bader's not even there anymore. You know what I mean? It's like those moments to me, I think partly fall on the manager, and I think he's been like very up and down in responding to those moments.
I would agree with you with that. It wasn't last season in particular. It wasn't until the Angels series. I think that was like the second series after the All-Star break. They had lost the series against the Rockies.
Right.
And I certainly pissed Boone off in that series that Sunday because I asked him if he thinks that the team is still championship caliber. Like, because up until then, like they were saying, like you were just saying right now, like everything's cool, like we'll get out of this. And it's like anyone with eyes can see that this team's not winning a title this year. It's not happening. But it wasn't until the Angels series, I think that was the following series where Boone's tone definitely shifted and was like, it felt like he came to the realization then that, oh shit, like this team stinks. Like we're not winning. We're not winning the title.
Right.
But yeah, I think the Bader quote happened during the Astros series in the Bronx, where he was like,
yes,
something about like we have momentum. I don't remember the exact quote. It was bizarre in the moment. It's like, what are we watching here? Like, are we watching the same team? It's like, no, this team's not going anywhere. He's in a tough, like Boone is in a tough spot though, because it's like you want to back your guys and you also don't want to throw them under the bus publicly. So like, what can you do as the manager? It's tough. It's really hard.
Sometimes you just gotta air people out when it's just not working. I mean, like
that's not his MO.
No, I know. Yeah, exactly. I agree
good
with you.
Good or bad. Right. That's not what he is bred to do. Like Alex Cora has no problem getting on people's asses in the public, and he'll do that frequently. And then, you have Boone, who's just not going to do it. Like I just said with Volpe a few minutes ago, Volpe has stunk for 2.5 months now, and you're just not going to hear him criticize him. That's just not what he's going to do.
Right. All right, let's move on. Joshua Finchler. I'm sure someone will ask about Volpe leadoff in the lineup shuffle. You were correct, Joshua. So to switch it up, do we think they will buy extra days, skip a start or two, or even phantom IL Luis Gil with the break coming mid-July? Innings are getting up there. He didn't pitch last year at all, and he's come back down to earth quickly. With his ceiling, want to make sure he's able to contribute in October.
Yeah, we actually asked Boone about this past weekend in Toronto. He didn't give any like concrete plans, but they are already discussing creative ways for him to get extra rest or skip starts, especially like around the All-Star break, because there's some built-in rest days coming up soon. So I would imagine that how they use Gil will change this month, just with the off days they have and the All-Star break coming up. So yes, like there are already conversations of that happening. As to what they're going to do, I don't know yet.
Do you think he's crashing quickly down to earth? I think he just had like two bad starts. I mean,
2 bad starts.
He was pitching like 2023 Garrett Cole. I mean, that was kind of like unrealistic to be sustainable.
Yeah, he's had 2 bad starts, and then the Boston start was not great either, which was his 3 starts ago. Yeah. I wouldn't say crashing down to earth. It's something to, keep an eye on. Like,
yeah, for sure.
Because he certainly wasn't the same pitcher that we saw in his first like 10-ish starts. He's gotten hit hard recently. So yeah, I mean, like there's definitely things to keep an eye on, but I wouldn't say I'm like completely out on heel. I think he's trash or anything like that. It is definitely notable that he has struggled in the past 2 outings, but I still think his stuff is really good. We've known since the beginning that his command is going to be iffy. His command has been iffy in the past 3 outings. The walks have started to creep back up, not locating his fastball as well as he was. I think these are things that are fixable. So I do think that the potential is still there to pitch as well as what we have seen.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing right now is just we were talking about Rodon. I think not to compare the two of them in the quality, but I think Heel's fastball has kind of left him a little bit, especially on the command side. So that feels like the biggest issue right now, and then everything has kind of just been a tick below. But I think if he can like get his fastball command back, then he should be all right. So
yeah, I mean it's more like delivery related with Heel. He had a similar issue, I believe, in April, where they found something wrong with his delivery and they ended up fixing it, and it wasn't an issue. I don't know if it's the same issue that's crept up recently, but that should give people at least some optimistic views that it is fixable. Whereas like with Carlos, the issues run deeper than mechanics.
It's right. There's more going on there.
Yeah.
Okay. Jenny Fry. DJ LeMahieu has been slightly better this week. Not saying much considering how atrocious he's been since he got back from the IL. Excuse me, but he's at least been semi-productive with a couple extra base hits, hard contact, and some RBIs. Do you think he's getting back to the DJ we all know and love? I'm not saying he'll ever be back to batting title DJ, but productivity when the lineup has been dead is a good sign.
Yeah, I mean it's a few games, like I said before. I don't know if DJ is, the DJ that the Yankees hoped coming into the season. Like coming into the year, honestly, there may not have been a player who had more hype on what he was looking like in practices and behind the scenes than DJ. I don't know if we're gonna like see that version of him this season, but it's at least encouraging that he was driving the ball this weekend. I just need to see more of a bigger sample size to say, okay, like, yeah, DJ is back, because almost the entirety of his season so far this year has been bad. So I'm not going to like overreact to 3 games where he had success. That's just not how I look at it.
I agree. I don't have much more to add to that. But we do have a follow-up LeMahieu question from Josh McGovern. The DJ problem. This weekend wasn't terrible for him. At the same time, he really only performed well with the Blue Jays bullpen aiding him. He still had a couple not so great at bats. Do you think this performance will hinder the idea of picking up a third baseman at the deadline? Will they still play this favoritism towards him? It's impossible to have a rally with him in a lineup against a good team.
I mean, if he's not performing well, like the Yankees know that corner infield is the problem. Like just talking with people, like they see that. They have eyes too. I don't think him having a good series, if I'm understanding your question correctly, like this performance against the Blue Jays is not going to like sway them one way or the other because it's such a small sample size. I think the Yankees, if this continues, know that like they need another bat. Where it comes, I don't know. Corner infield, middle infield, second base, they need something extra. So no, I don't think like this weekend in Toronto changes anything.
I also want to add and I've mentioned this before. Brian Cashman is ruthless. And I know that he's been here for so long and people have so many varying opinions on him and people thinking that his time is up, and whether that's true or not is for a discussion at another time. But if Brian Cashman sees an opportunity to upgrade at the expense of a player that's not performing at the levels needed to win baseball games and win a title, he's in the move is available for him, he's going to do it. I mean, he almost traded Glaber to the Marlins. Like, he has a long track record of doing this. He brought in Rizzo when Luke Voit was still like on the team and like still producing. Like, this, he has a long history of doing that. So,
And he also traded Jordan Montgomery, who was
right.
beloved in the Yankees clubhouse. So he has shown before that he's not afraid to hurt feelings.
Yeah, but this has gone on since he's been the GM of the Yankees. Like, he does this. He doesn't care. So I think we also need to keep that in mind. I know there was like mention of like potential favoritism. I don't think Brian Cashman plays favorites. I think he feels like certain players earn the respect to see if they can get out of it, which I think is the right thing to do. But I don't think he has favorites unless you're like Aaron Judge and Juan Soto, which they should be your favorites. You know what I mean? And like, obviously Volpe is kind of in that category right now because he's the number one pick and he's there and he has some like cachet with that. But eventually, if he's not doing what he needs to do offensively, like that starts to wear down as well. But I think if there's a corner infield bat that happens to play third base and DJ's not performing and they can make the deal, they're going to make the deal. Like, I don't think that that's going to preclude them from doing anything because of some perceived favoritism. He's what they have right now is the best way to put it. And if there's somebody to improve the right now down the road and they could do it, I strongly believe Brian Cashman will do it and people will just have to deal with it. You know, you're just going to have to be an adult about it.
Totally agree. I don't have anything else to add.
Yeah. So John has one more question. Chris, I read your article with Matt Blake. It is very hard to win games when you are down 9. Is there any talk on moving Rodon to the pen if he doesn't fix his approach? I mean, there's a very straightforward answer to this, and it's he makes $160 million and he ain't going to the bullpen.
That is the answer.
All right. Sorry. I know I didn't write the article, Chris did, but it felt very obvious that they're not going to have a $160 million reliever in the pen who also struggles to get swing and miss. So he would fit right in.
Exactly. Yeah, he's actually perfect for the bullpen.
He's perfect for them. But I don't think that's going to happen, even though, unfortunately, his profile is matching the bullpen that can't get any strikeouts. We had another Boone question, but it was very similar to the one that we answered. So we'll pass on that one. But no disrespect to Michael Bellucci, I believe it is. So thank you for sending the question. Thank you for everyone sending their questions. We appreciate it. So Chris, as we wrap this up, any final thoughts before we get out of here? And before after my Alexa tells me what the weather is for tomorrow.
I'm very curious to see how many stolen bases Ellie De La Cruz is going to have this week. I'm thinking like 7. Like if he gets on
in the first 3 innings.
But if he gets on base against anyone, it's basically like a triple because Trevino can't throw anyone out and Wells can't throw anyone out. So if he gets on first base, like I feel like that's going to be a guaranteed 2 stolen bases. Very curious to see it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, it's hard to throw that guy out if you have a cannon.
100%. And you have 2 of the weaker arms in baseball in Wells and Trevino going against De La Cruz. So very curious to see how it works out.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see Ellie De La Cruz, and like part of me just thinks he's going to have like a coming out party. Like he's just going to do everything against the Yankees. Not to say that the Reds will win these games, but I feel like this is a stage for him to be like, I'm going to do my thing. You know what I mean? I'm going to let you know who I am. So not to wish bad things against the Yankees, but I just feel like part of me is just like this is inevitable. Like he's just going to be all over the damn place. Like he's just going to be impacting all of these games. And by the end, people are just going to almost like be cheering him just because he's like that dynamic. You know, he adds like that energy to a game. So yeah, I'm actually very excited to see him play. I've seen him a couple times. So it'd be nice to see him in the Bronx. Yeah, I don't. Hopefully, this is a good week for the Yankees. I'm not totally sure they're out of their funk. Toronto is not a good team, and for them to split with the Blue Jays, I felt was still disappointing because Toronto's bad. That's not a good baseball team. So I'm curious to see if they can just build on the momentum of splitting that series and putting some runs up. And nice that they're back home. I know that they've had I believe that they've had more road games in the first half than home games.
Yep.
So I think that's something that we should also like be mindful of, like with this record and everything that's going on. They've been on the road a lot this season so far. So it's nice that they'll have a home stand and they're playing two teams that they're definitely better than and they need to play like it. So I mean it's kind of like Captain Obvious here, but I'm just looking to see if they can build on some momentum against these two teams and start to get back to their winning ways with some consistency. So, and also Glaber. I'm very curious to see if like Glaber can be that third bat that helps out the lineup. You know, obviously some good signs in Toronto, but it'd be nice if he can continue that and start to get his season back on track with some consistency.
Totally agree. Heel and Rodon are pitching against the Reds. Very curious to see how they bounce back. If any, like you just mentioned with Glaber, is anyone going to emerge as the third wheel to Judge and Soto? There's a lot of storylines for this week to watch out for.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining me again, Chris, at the home of the Athletic, the New York Times building. Thank you, everyone, for checking out the episode. We appreciate it. We're 20 episodes in. We're very thankful for everyone that supports the podcast. Please subscribe if you haven't already. You can find us on all your favorite podcast platforms. You can also find us on YouTube at the same name, Views from 314 Feet Podcasts. Maybe we'll figure out a way to do another live stream. There were a bunch of people that really enjoyed that. So maybe we can try to get that going this week too. But we'll let everybody know where we stand with that. But thank you, everyone, for listening. Chris, thank you for joining me after your flight. And we will speak to you all very soon.